The church has struggled literally from the beginning with a problem that has no single solution. That is, what is the relationship between our loyalty to Jesus Christ and the various loyalties we have within the cultures we live in? To say it differently, how do we reconcile the demands of the gospel with our various responsibilities and duties in the world in which we happen to live? The late theologian H. Richard Niebuhr, in his famous book, Christ and Culture, proposed that instead of there being just one single answer, there are 5 different typical answers that have been given throughout the life of the church. All 5 of these typical answers to the problem understand Jesus in different ways. They all accept Jesus as Lord, but they all understand his lordship differently. This week, I'm looking at these 5 different understandings of Jesus and calling them 5 portraits of Jesus. All are based on the original, but all emphasize different facets of who Jesus was and what he taught. It's important to note that all of them contain authentic interpretations of Jesus. That is, they all contain recognizable portraits of him. But as Niebuhr points out, all of them are incomplete. Yesterday, we looked at the most radical interpretation, which Niebuhr calls Christ against culture. This interpretation describes the solution to the Christ and culture problem as a total and complete dissociation between the two, and often results in a complete withdrawal from society. Think monastic communities or communes. Today, we'll see the other end of the spectrum. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Wednesday, April 17th, 2024. If the Christ against culture impulse was to withdraw, its opposite is to envision Christ as the personification of the best and highest of human culture. If the Christ against culture envisions Christ as the new lawgiver who demands absolute obedience, even if obedience puts Christians in conflict with culture, the opposite impulse, what Niebuhr calls Christ of culture, envisions Christ as a great moral teacher or philosopher, similar to but more perfect than the great philosophers such as Aristotle and Plato. As a philosopher and teacher, what this Jesus does is hold up before us the highest and best of what human culture stands for. He doesn't call us out of the world, but shows us what true human life looks like within the world, within human culture. Though it has been a part of the church from the beginning, this view of Jesus was especially pronounced during the 18th century, during what we call the Enlightenment. Cultured thinkers in that period, usually trying to meld the best of Christian faith with the best of human culture, envisioned Christ's teachings as the pinnacle of moral instruction. Many of them de-emphasized the more difficult sayings of Jesus, as well as his miracles and healings. Some, like Thomas Jefferson, went so far as to literally take scissors to their Bible and remove whatever in the New Testament didn't conform with their understanding of Jesus. This, of course, is an extreme example of the Christ of culture impulse, but it fits with the idea of trying to fuse the Christ of the Bible and his moral teachings with the best and highest of human culture. Niebuhr writes, "The philosophers, statesmen, reformers, poets, and novelists who acclaim Christ with Jefferson all repeat the same theme. Jesus Christ is the great enlightener, the great teacher, the one who directs all men and culture to the attainment of wisdom, moral perfection, and peace." He goes on to write, "Whatever the categories are by means of which he is understood, the things for which he stands are fundamentally the same: a peaceful, cooperative society achieved by moral training." Now, many people unfairly conflate or confuse liberal Christianity with this type of Christ and culture impulse, but the truth is there are Christ of culture types spread across the entire spectrum of Christianity. Mostly when people attack the Christ of culture position, they don't recognize that what they are really protesting is just a different understanding of culture embedded within whatever group they disdain. They fail to see that They have their own visions of culture, to which Jesus is also the highest moral teacher. So what does this version of Christianity get right? Well, it understands that human beings are in culture, and culture is in all human beings. There is no such thing as human life divorced from culture. It understands that the Christ of the Bible calls us to be faithful within whatever culture we happen to belong to. What does this version of Christianity get wrong? Well, it often fails to acknowledge the radical nature of who Jesus is and what Jesus calls us to believe and do. Nevertheless, it remains an important way that many Christians have navigated the tension between our loyalty to Jesus Christ and the many loyalties we have within culture. It may not be the complete answer, but it always pushes us to recognize that culture is part of God's creation. Since we live in God's world, we necessarily live within some form of human culture. We can call parts of culture into question. We can seek to change the culture, but what we cannot do ultimately is live outside of culture. So whatever other deficiencies this type has, it does have the virtue of reminding us that to be Christian is also to be human, and to be human is to live within some form of Christian culture. Are there better answers? Well, tomorrow we'll look at another type and its portrait of Jesus. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.